Have you expressed any specific concerns to Israel on that, sir?
Well, I have not been reluctant in expressing my concerns what's going on. And it's my hope and expectation that there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. I remain somewhat hopeful, but the hospital must be protected.
Okay, so that is Biden, upon being prompted, pointing out that the horror that's happening at Al-Shifa, something needs to be done. The hospital needs to be protected. I would have been very clear that the patients and the people working there and those sheltering there need to be protected, including the many incredibly young patients whose lives, some have already been lost, many more at risk. And we could certainly critique the fact that, man, there was no energy to what he was saying there. Maybe it was supposed to get across some gravitas, or that he gets the seriousness of this, or that it's affecting him a lot, but it felt pretty low energy. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is that coming out of that, where at least he said the hospital needs to be protected, the White House immediately sought to clarify his comments, because what he was referring to was this extra burden that faces the IDF as they go into Gaza. This is according to the National Security Council coordinator, by the way, because Hamas does shelter themselves behind civilian infrastructure. This includes places like hospitals, schools, or tunnels. And the way that Hamas operates places civilians in Gaza at greater risk, which is a tough problem for the IDF when legitimate targets are buried inside the civilian infrastructure. So look, of course, that is not incorrect. Hamas has definitely done that. But when you have a time where Biden is at least pointing out that maybe this can be a hospital that is not leveled, to then immediately back off and say, what we meant is that it's gonna be tough for the IDF because of stuff that Hamas did. So we're not gonna do anything. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like Biden was sort of arm twisted a little bit into sounding like he had some empathy, and then those around him backed off even from that. Anyway, we have a lot more on this. Aida, what do you think?
I just have a severe concern for what's happening in the Middle East. And, it's really hard to talk about it because, like I told you earlier, I've been advised not to speak about it because of the consequences of whatever you're saying being taken by people. And I decided to talk about it for that reason and just lean into it and face it that, we are in a time right now where if you say you really like apples, it means you hate oranges. And, it speaks to the information and the education level of the people in this country. A lot of people are having discourse about these issues and have no idea what's happening. I've been to Israel, I've been to Palestine. I don't want any of those people to be dead in either of the places, but I think it's important to be honest about what we're having, what this conversation is, and what the government in this country does. I come from a group of people who are always being condemned for being here. My father is undocumented, and people are always in this country saying, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, if your government wouldn't be putting its nose in my country's business, we would probably be at home. And I think that, a lot of people in this country are suffering. A lot of people in this country have needs, but America is always involved in everybody else's business because they don't care about the people here or there or anywhere. What they care about is money, power, and position. And so when I hear Joe Biden speak, which, I'm not a Joe Biden fan and I haven't been prior to this crisis, but I definitely am not a fan of his. I think that we have to face the reality is people in Palestine are suffering, and the people who have nothing to do with it, and people in Israel are suffering. And I know women in both countries who are tired of it. I met with a group of women when I was there. I went to Ramallah and I sat at a table with Israeli mothers and Palestinian mothers alike who are like, these people start all of this stuff and our kids are the ones who suffer and we are tired of this. So, I'm not going to denounce that. I'm not going to be publicly saying that I don't give a damn about Palestinian life. Who am I? Those are brown people just like me. And I'm not going to say that. And that doesn't mean that I want Israel to be erased and that I want Israeli children to be murdered. And if you are that dumb that that's what you deduce from what I'm saying, then you need to pick up a book. But, I am so tired of this political positioning that is constantly at the forefront where people are suffering. And that is children are being erased off the face of this planet and have been from both countries, which, you demonize one and then the other one. The stuff that has been happening is real. White supremacy is real. It exists in Israel. It exists all over the world. And that does not mean that I'm anti-Semitic. That just means that the truth is the truth. And as a brown person who has been oppressed and feels it on a daily basis, I cannot with good conscience sit here and say that I don't give a damn about children that's being murdered. And at the 100%. Same time, bring them damn hostages home. Prioritize the hostage life, because I don't think that people are prioritizing their lives either. They have been used as a political ploy, and they have been disregarded. And there are babies that have been over there that are being held hostage, and nobody gives a damn about the people. That's the problem. Nobody gives a damn about the people. They keep saying the people, but they don't care about the people because they're not prioritizing life.
100%. Seems consistent. Look, we get criticized a lot sometimes by people that aren't familiar with what we individually or maybe the network has said. So if you are new to us talking about these sorts of topics, then welcome. I'm going to argue that my position here is consistent with the way that I've approached every foreign conflict for literally decades, from long before I had a platform like this. I don't want civilians to be massacred. I don't want it here. I don't want it in Israel. I don't want it in Yemen. I don't want it in Ukraine. I didn't want it in Syria or Afghanistan or Iraq or any of the other conflicts that we spoke out against, or that, at large, the network has spoken out against for literally decades. And so consistency, sometimes people say that they like it, but they don't. But for me, at least, I'm only responsible for what I say, and I feel like it's consistent. Ida's obviously not happy with Biden's strategy. She is not alone. More than 400 US officials from a ton of different areas of the bureaucracy have signed a letter protesting his policy so far. We're gonna give you just a couple excerpts from it. It says, we call on President Biden to urgently demand a ceasefire and to call for de-escalation of the current conflict by securing the immediate release of the Israeli hostages and arbitrarily detained Palestinians, the restoration of water, fuel, electricity, and other basic services, and the passage of adequate humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. They also cite that the overwhelming majority of Americans support a ceasefire, something that I don't know why that's not talked about more. Seems relevant that his stance, his policy goes against 66% of Americans and 80% of Democrats who feel that way. So obviously there are many in government who don't agree with Biden. I want to give credit to one, Representative Ilhan Omar this week is going to introduce legislation to disapprove of a multi-million-dollar package of bomb equipment that the Biden administration had previously, prior to this conflict, said that they were going to sell $320 million of kits for precision guidance kits for bombs. After the conflict began, Biden has announced that they are going to be selling that. There's no guarantee that Omar's bill would come up for a vote, and Biden could veto it regardless. But if there is a companion bill in the Senate, then that would trigger at least a vote, and we could get people, on the record on this. So limited things being done in government, Ida, to try to, change the course of this conflict, which we're going to talk about the toll in just a minute. But yeah, at least there is some pushback against Joe Biden.
And there should be, because look at the conditions of the Americans. It's, what I'm talking about is there's this global disease that's going on, this capitalism, this greed, this oppression. It has been here forever. And this generation that's coming is tired of it. And they are beginning to turn this upside down, flip the table. People are really tired. This is a global things that are happening in Congo and the Sudan, like people are suffering globally. And these rich mother effers that continue to just comment on what's happening from the comfort of their own home, who are not being affected. It's so easy to chime in on war because you've never experienced it. What a privilege we have that, yes, we've had terrorist attacks in this country, but our daily life does not consist of survival, having, materials around our homes to protect us from missiles. We don't know what that life is like. So it's easy to get on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. I'm not on that foolishness, and say, I think. You got to pay attention to the people that we have been employing that run this country. We are vulnerable. And what we don't understand is that this can't continue. It will not continue. You cannot continue to do this to people and think that there will be no consequences. It will happen in America, and we have to stop. We have to say, these leaders are not working and we need to employ better people.
Yeah. By the way, everything that you just said about how easy it is to do that, obviously that's also what I do. But at least from this position of privilege, I try to center concern for the people that are suffering most in this conflict. It would be super easy to just say, yeah, it's a military strategy. It has to happen. It's like to express in such a callous way the pursuit of an ideology when you don't know the region, you don't know the conflict. I've spent a little bit of time in Israel when I was studying in Cairo, but even then, like, there should be a humility that runs throughout all of that, and the humility should be grounded in being most concerned for the people who are suffering most. And right now, there is no debate to be had about who is suffering most. When you have, like prematurely born children whose lives are 100% we don't know what's going to happen in the next day or two. It kind of feels like that should be the thing that we should be primarily concerned about.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.